KMES English Medium Junior College welcome its students for the online lectures of philosophy. For Chapter 4, How Do We Know? For the topic Western Epistemology. Students, in today's lecture of Chapter 4, How Do We Know? We are going to study the following subtopic: Western Epistemology, the concept of self, and the theory of truth. Epistemology in Western tradition. The complex interrelationship between epistemology and metaphysics can be seen in the Western tradition too. The metaphysical question that is was center of in this tradition at the beginning. However, in order to know what is or what is not, one has to find the question, how do we know it? In course of the development of Western philosophy, it was only in the period of modern philosophy that epistemology occupied a central place. The reflection over the sources of knowledge has begun in the pre-Socrates era. Parmenides found that the universe is permanent and eternal, and that the change is an illusion. Whereas Heraclitus insists that impermanence is the nature of the universe and permanence is an illusion. Both of them agree on one point, that the knowledge based on sense perception is illusionary. Reality can be known only by a way of reason. The skepticism that the sophists advocate was a consequence of the mutually inconsistent view about the nature of reality presented by the philosopher. The sophists did not believe in the potential of human capacity to gain knowledge. That is why they founded skepticism, which is a theory that doubts every possibility of objective knowledge. The argument of the skeptic is that due to the inherent limitation of human perception and reason, the nature of that is real cannot be known as it is. They not only believe that humans can know the world only within the limits of their capacity, but also that every individual can know the world within the limits of his or her own individual capacity. For this reason, they also accepted relativism, which says that knowledge is relative to the individual who knows. It is in the context that Protagoras quoted, man is the measure of all things, is famous. It should be remembered that Western epistemology is by and large constituted in the thought to attempt to refute speculatism and relativism. An excellent example of this is Plato's position about knowledge. Knowledge must be true. It must be of what is. Plato firmly believed that knowledge has to be objective, infallible, universal, and true at all the time. His epistemological position is closely connected with his metaphysical theory of the world of form. Plato's awareness of the fact that unless the objects of the knowledge are unchangeable and eternal, knowledge cannot be true for all time, is at the root of this theory. The definition of knowledge as justified through belief was established through Plato, in which he asserted that knowledge is not just perception, nor an opinion, nor a mere belief. The concept of knowledge. When a person claims to know something, that claim should be examined before being accepted. The definition of knowledge, that knowledge as justified through belief, provides the criteria with which such a claim needs to be explained. Knowledge is expressed through proposition. A proposition is a sentence which has two values. The sentence that can be either true or false are said to have two values. The criteria that the definition of knowledge includes that are applied to a proposition that expresses knowledge. If the proposition fully fulfills those criteria, then it gets the status of knowledge. Otherwise, it is treated as a mere belief. The claim of knowledge is put forward by saying, I know P. Here, P is a symbol of a proposition. For example, I know that there are rings around Saturn. Let us see when this knowledge claim can be accepted as being appropriate. We must firmly believe in something that we claim to know. It is self-contradictory to say that I know that there are rings around Saturn. But I do not believe it. It can be said that though knowledge is objective, belief is the subjective aspect of knowledge. You of course know that to believe in something is not to know it. If someone believes that Saturn is the planet nearest to Earth, it is not knowledge. Since it is not true, knowledge can never be false. Therefore, the second criteria of knowledge is true. We will consider the criteria on the basis of which we determine whether a particular position is true or false in the next session. Justifiability. The third criteria of knowledge indicates that in order to accept that a person knows something, it is not enough that the person believes in it and that the belief is true. It is essential to justify that belief. It should be possible to provide evidence for the truth of the belief. Suppose we ask the person who believes that there are rings around Saturn, how does he know it? And that person says that he has seen it in a dream, then we are definitely not going to say that he has knowledge. A knowledge claim is unacceptable. It is true belief cannot be justified properly. A justification is proper if it follows an objective method. If one's reason are considering one belief to be true is one dream, this reason is subjective or personal. This is an objective justification. The justification is objective when it provides evidence which can be examined by everyone. We can consider in the issue of justification of knowledge. It is not sufficient to merely observe the relation between the fact and the statement expressing knowledge, but it is also necessary to take into account the interrelationship between the statement expressing knowledge. For a system of knowledge, both truth and validity are important. If a statement is a system of knowledge is inconsistent with the other statement in the same system, then the construction of system of knowledge would become difficult. In logic, there are processes of thinking. It is present in a form of argument. Arguments are further divided into premises and conclusions. In a sense, the decision about objective justification is a decision of source of knowledge. It has to take into account what is the source or means through which one comes to know something and whether that source is appropriate or not. Before taking up the discussion of the source of knowledge in Western tradition, let us see the three theories of truth that offer the criteria of truth. Theories of truth. You must have noted that the concept of truth is central in the definition of knowledge that we have seen above. Although knowledge is expressed through proposition, every proposition does not express knowledge. A proposition is an assertive sentence. If the assertiveness is correct, then the proposition is true, and only true proposition can express knowledge. Since truth is the precondition of knowledge, the question what is truth is very important for epistemology. The three different theories propose three different criteria in order to answer this question. These three theories are the correspondence theory, the coherence theory, and the pragmatic theory. Let us study each of the theories in detail. The correspondence theory of truth. According to this theory, a proposition is true when there is a correspondence between the proposition and the state of affairs it describes. The proposition Gangtok is the capital of Sikkim, describes the actuality correctly. So this proposition is true. The truth of a proposition is related to the situation it describes. The proposition is false if it does not describe the situation as it actually is. The proposition Venus is a star is false according to this criteria, as Venus is actually a planet. Knowingly or unknowingly, we use this criteria in our daily life many a time. Someone comes and tells us that there is a notice on the notice board that tomorrow is a holiday for the college. Since you have a suspicion, you go and check the notice board and find out that there is such notice put up. You get angry at your friend for lying. In the field of science also, the criteria of correspondence is very important. Science uses the method of observation and experimentation in order to know whether the proposition describes the reality accurately or not. This criteria is quite close to the ordinary understanding of when should a proposition be accepted as true. However, due to certain criteria, in this theory, some objections are raised against this theory. It is not every time possible to check the relation between the proposition and the state of affairs. The proposition about the past or the future cannot be checked in this way, as they have described does not exist in the present. They cannot tell today whether the propositions such as 100 years ago there will be an ice age on the earth correspond to the state of affairs it describes. Similarly, it is not possible to say whether general propositions are true or false. The proposition, all men are mortal, is applicable to all humans in past, present and future. We cannot examine it through using this criteria. The law in science are generally statements which are true, but their truth cannot be established within this criteria. The proposition is in logic and mathematics are said to be formal. They are not describe the empirical world, but express logical or mathematical relationships. Obviously, the criteria of correspondence is not applicable to them. Coherence theory of truth. According to correspondence theory of truth, the truth of the proposition depends on its relationship with reality. In contrast, the coherence theory of truth found that the truth of a proposition is dependent on the relation it has with the other propositions. The system of knowledge is constructed by putting together many true propositions. The knowledge of many particular subjects is not just an aggregate or a group of true propositions. Knowledge is a system of those propositions. All these propositions are consistently related with each other. A proposition, the true value of which is to be tested, is said to be true if it is consistent with other accepted truths in that particular field of knowledge. If there is a proposition which says that if a number x is multiplied by 0, the number you get is x, then this proposition is false. This is so because it is not consistent with the accepted truth in mathematics, that if you multiply any number by 0, the resulting number is always 0. If someone tells us that the birth year of my mother is 1995 and that of his father is 1993 and I was born in 1990, then it will obviously conclude that the last statement is false. It is not consistent with the earlier two statements, which we assume to be true, as one is born before the birth of his or her parent. This example brings it to our notice that consistency of coherence is a significant criteria of truth. Some problems arise with respect to the criteria too. Even if a system is mutually coherent, a proposition is created. How can we assure that it is true? Have you read the story of Harry Potter or see the movie based on them? Fictitious stories like this, whether they are fairy tale or science fiction, are internally coherent yet not true. Why is this so? Because the stories do not fit to reality or actuality. In empirical science, along with consistency, correspondence to reality is also important. Without such correspondence, the proposition that claims to describe reality can never be true. Pragmatic theory of truth. This theory of truth is quite different from the other two. According to this theory, a proposition is true when an action based on it is successful, when it attains its desirable effect. That means the truth of a proposition is not dependent on relation. It has to reality or to other propositions. It is dependent on the consequence of the act based on the proposition. If the action brings forth a useful or a beneficial result, then the original proposition is true. But if the action based on the proposition is unsuccessful, then the proposition is false. On observing a bottle full of colorless liquid, if someone says, this is water, one way to determine whether the statement is true or false is to drink that liquid. If it quenches thirst, only then the proposition is true, or otherwise knowledge is used in the actual process of living. Pragmatism gives importance to this usefulness of knowledge. The experimental method of science is also based on this perspective, that if a proposition is true, it must be possible to perform the action based on it successfully. For example, in order to assess the truth of the statement that this liquid is an acid, the litmus paper is put into it. If the accepted effect of the liquid change its color is obtained, then the proposition is judged to be true. The main problem that arises about this theory is that even if a belief can lead to an action giving rise to the expected result, the success of an action does not assure the truth of the proposition. When a group of students goes for mountaineering and get tired and start saying, I cannot walk any further and I will wait here. If someone tells him that he is in danger to wait on this spot as the wild animal come here frequently, then the students start walking till the destination out of fear. However, the proposition wild animals come frequently cannot be judged to be true on the basis of the effect of the action based on that proposition. It can be a lie that is expected to motivate the student to keep walking. Of course, such a trick may not be useful every time. So when these propositions result into expected consequence, it will have to be judged as true. And when it fails to obtain a desired consequence, it will have to be judged as false. This means if we accept the pragmatic theory, truth cannot be objective. It will be relatively to the person or to the situation. It is clear from the consideration of the theories of truth that although each theory brings to light one important aspect of truth, none of them is perfect. That is why none of these theories offer a complete understanding of truth. In reality, different systems of knowledge that exist in different fields correspond with reality. The proposition that they consist of are consistent with each other, and they give us to a successful action too. That is why, rather than forcing on any one aspect, one must reflect our truth in a holistic manner.